Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining PortaOne webinar about new features. Your microphones are muted, that's by design. At any point in time, you are welcome to type questions in the Q&A section. There is a separate section in Zoom for that. So let's start. This webinar is going to be conducted by my colleague, Svetlana Melnichuk, who is our project manager, and myself, Mike Kidik, product officer at PortaOne. So we will cover today, of course, new features of the PortaSwitch. We will cover 4 maintenance releases, 107 through 110. Svetlana will update you on the developments of the PortaPhone and also about new things on the Add-on Mart. At the end of this webinar, as usual now, we will provide you a free gift. So let's start. Speaking about new features, my first block will be dedicated to the web interface. We've introduced a new web interface for administrators a few years back. And let's talk about main menu, because this is the feature that everybody uses and uses a lot. So the issues with the current menu is that some of the menu items were buried deep inside. So there are 3 or 4 levels in the menu, and when you need to set up, for example, routing plans, you need to go to the voice call processing, expand it, then you go to infrastructure, expand it, then to voice call processing, then into the routing section, and only then you can open routing plans. So that's basically a lot of clicks. It's just click, 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 click until you reach what you really need. Of course, there is an easier way, and a lot of users use it. That's a search on top of the menu. Yeah, and people just type the menu name and get it and basically click it. That's much simpler. The only drawback of this approach is that you have to remember the name of the menu, or at least some words in that name. And also you still have to type, which takes time. So we redesigned the main menu. First of all, we simplified it. Now there are only 2 levels. There is no 3rd or 4th level. And the other point is that to reach the 2nd level, you just have your mouse pointer over a menu item of the 1st level. So for example, you put the mouse pointer here and the 2nd level opens, and then you just proceed to routing plans and open it. So basically, this new design makes all the menu items a single click away. We hope that it will speed up your work. It will be easier to work with this kind of menu. So that's the change. As you can see in the screenshot, it's maintenance release 110, which is about to be released. Like tomorrow, we are supposed to announce that MR110 is released. Now, the next feature on the web interface is sidesheets. We moved all object creation into the sidesheets. Those are sliding panels which show up on the right of your web interface. To give you an idea, this panel is very similar to batch account operations. We had that panel for quite a while now. So this is a similar behavior of that panel for batch operations. The main reason why we did this drastic move, that we moved creation from a panel on the left into the side sheet, is that quite often our users, when they need to create a new object, for example, a new customer, they would start typing data of that new customer into different fields on the web interface, just to realize later that they are populating those fields on the search panel instead of the creation panel. So you had to give up that information that you already entered, switch to the create panel, and start typing everything again. And I personally myself ran into such situation too many times. And if you run into the situation, please raise a hand. There is a feature in Zoom, you can raise a hand. So I know that this is actually relevant to you. So that is the most and utmost reason why we moved object creation into the side sheet on the right. But it's not the only reason. So that has already been done in a maintenance release 110. It opens us for new possibilities to us. For example, the existing panel is a very narrow panel for object creation. So generally, you cannot fit much information into that panel. Probably 10 fields or something. Usually those are all the mandatory fields. And currently, object creation is a two-stage process in most cases. So for example, when you create a product, you create it on, you fill in the create panel, click save, and then you go to the full page for the product and finish your product creation. So first you get a draft product, and then you finally get a product which can be used. With side sheets, we are not limited in width. We can make them wider. We can make them as wide as half of the screen, for example. We can also use tabs inside of the side sheet. So we can have more information populated as a single step. So when you create a new product, you would be able to fill in all the required things, not just basic parameters. And when you click save, it means you have a product which is ready to be used, not just, you know, some draft product or draft volume discount plan or something like that. So that's one opportunity that is open to us. And the other opportunity, again, I have to explain what is the issue we are trying to deal with here. In the existing web interface with existing concept, when you create an object, you must have all the building bricks for that object before you can create the object. So for example, if you want a product which includes a particular tariff or particular subscription, you must have the subscription or tariff prepared beforehand. So you have to remember, keep in your mind all the relations between the objects and like which things have to be created first before the other things can be created. With side sheets, we can change this concept, and we can have, for example, while you are creating a product, you realize that subscription is missing. You haven't created the subscription yet, and you want to include the subscription into the product. From this side sheet with the product creation, you can open another side sheet on top of it, create your subscription, go back to the product creation, and finish product configuration. So you would be able to open multiple side sheets on top of each other. So these two more things, like additional parameters for object creation and creating related objects while creating the main object, these things are not going to happen instantly overnight. We will have to go through all the objects in PortaBilling and gradually introduce this functionality. So it will take us some time, but I hope like in several months, maybe in a year, we will have all PortaBilling objects covered. That's where we are heading. Enough about side sheets. Let's speak about the new web interface for distributors. So during the previous webinar, I mentioned that we introduced the new web interface for resellers. It's the same story about distributor interface. We replaced the old ugly web interface with a new one, which follows the same concept as administrator web interface. And the main improvement of this interface, I believe, is that it works much faster than the old one used to work. Also, it's more user-friendly. It has modern look and feel. So we hope that it will allow you to onboard more distributors to resell your products. Now, the next topic is quite hot in the modern telecommunication world. Many carriers these days, many service providers or wholesale operators started to care about CLI, and some of them started rejecting calls if the call does not contain a valid CLI. Some of them started imposing surcharges if the call comes with particular CLI or invalid CLI or no CLI at all. And we've been trying to address this issue, and we did some integrations, mostly targeted for North American market. But what we built is more flexible tool, I believe, to handle this CLI validation and deciding where to send calls and not to send calls. So you start with categorizing vendors or other vendor connections. basically you mark them whether these vendors accept calls with valid CLI only, or they accept calls with any CLIs. Basically, they don't care about CLI. After that, you can set up your validation rules for the CLI, where you can say which prefixes are okay, what length, like what number of digits is okay, and so on and so on. And for calls that comes to the systems, it will automatically check the CLI. If CLI is considered valid, then it's fine. It works the same way as it used to work before. The call is routed to all appropriate vendors. But if the CLI is invalid, when the routing list is built, the system will skip all those vendors, which you explicitly marked that these vendors require only valid CLIs. If the CLI in the call doesn't match any of the rules that you define, then as a last resort option, the system will use special library from Google, which is called leave phone number. And this library is used to do the validation of the phone number. And then the same rule applies. If the CLI is invalid, we choose only those vendors who don't care about the CLI. Now, there is a particular point that I would like to explicitly mention. Like 20 years or more than 20 years ago, when VoIP started, nobody cared about the CLI, or virtually nobody cared about CLIs. So I know for a fact that still a lot of our customer installations do not treat CLIs in any special way. I'm talking about the format of the phone number. So we have systems where CLIs come from customers in a local format, and they are sent over to vendors also in a local format. We have systems when CLI come with plus sign, CLI without plus sign, and so on and so on. So it's pretty much a mess. And I understand it. It's historical. It's okay. I mean, a lot of companies used to operate that way. It's fine. It's perfectly fine. But if we need to handle CLI properly and we need to validate them, we'll have to convert those CLIs or bring those CLIs to some unified format. And as usual, PortaOne recommends converting all the CLIs into E164 format when the call is received by the platform. So, you know, when CLI validation kicks in, call screening kicks in, some other features which are based on the CLI kick in, they would handle the call, the phone number in already proper format. Also, for Google Leap phone number to do the proper validation, the number has to be in a recognizable format. So we recommend to use dialing rules to convert CLIs into E164, have the system process the call, and if you need that CLI to be in a local format when you send the call outside of your network to a particular vendor, then you can use translation rules on the vendor connection to convert CLI back to the format that vendor requires. That would be the proper way of handling CLIs. Anyway, this feature is designed to do two more things. First of all, it will slightly improve your service for the customers. I'm talking about the setup time of the calls, because when you set up this feature, the system will not even try to send the call to a vendor, which we know for sure will not accept the call with invalid CLI. So there is no time wasted for the call routing and call setup. But the most important thing, this is the thing about money, of course. As I mentioned, some of the vendors impose surcharges on such calls. And obviously, if you charge a regular price, you charge your customer a regular price and the vendor imposes a surcharge on you, you are losing money on such calls with invalid CLI. So this feature is basically designed to stop this revenue loss, if you like. Let's move to the next feature. We've enhanced the SIM card inventory with additional fields. So more data can be stored about SIM cards. Examples are PIN codes or activation code for eSIM, sorry. So there is a whole bunch of additional fields. I'm not going to list all of them. It is described in the documentation. So in addition to that, if you need some extra information about SIM card, you can add custom fields to the SIM card. For example, if you have SIM cards which are printed and packaged for Christmas, so they have this Christmas design, and you want those SIM cards to be clearly distinguishable from regular SIM cards. So, for example, you don't run into a situation when by mistake you start selling Christmas SIM cards in summer. You can add a custom field with this explicit marking, like whether this is a regular SIM card or a Christmas SIM card, and just have each SIM card marked in the inventory. Custom fields work pretty much the same way as they work for accounts and customers. So you should be very well aware with that concept. But in addition to all this, we also added assignment of the SIM cards to customers. So until this day, you could always assign a SIM card to an account, and that means that SIM card is being used. But for business customers, it's very typical to have a batch of SIM cards shipped to the customer, and then they would activate those SIM cards, or they contact your customer service every time they get a new employee and they want to activate a SIM card, or they would do it through the self-care portal. So now it is possible to assign SIM cards to customers. The most important thing is that situations when you would the physical card was sent over to customer and it's stored somewhere in their office, but by mistake you assign the same SIM card in PortaBilling to account of another customer, these situations will now be impossible. In addition to assigning SIM cards to customers, it's now possible to assign SIM cards to distributors and representatives. This is basically for you to be able to keep track of various sales channels that are used to distribute your SIM cards. So we hope that all these changes will allow you to manage SIM cards effectively and have all the information about the SIM cards that you're selling in a single place. Now, the next feature is designed for call centers. At least I haven't seen a single example where it would be used outside of call centers. It's called Call Wrap-Up Timer. And, you know, in modern call center, it's very typical that after the agent finishes the call, they need to wrap up after that call. So basically, they would either create a note in a CRM system, like some note about this communication with the customer, or maybe they would create a ticket for their colleague to follow up on some particular issue and resolve it, or maybe something else. Generally, it's called after-call work. So with introduction of this wrap-up timers, for any hunt group in the cloud PBX, you can enable those wrap-up timers. They would kick in automatically after every call. And it means that while the timer is running, the particular agent is not getting any more incoming calls. So they can, you know, take their time to do the after-call work. If they finish the call earlier, they can click a button to say that they are available now. They can start receiving new calls. Or if some particular difficult case requires more time, they can also extend the timer. When I said they can press a button or they can extend the timer, I meant our default account self-care. So those actions are available on the self-care. But I understand that for call centers, as I mentioned, it's very typical to develop some special portals or to do the integrations with CRM and have some interface built into the CRM and so on. So if you have such applications for your call center customers, you can now introduce wrap-up timer there as well, because managing wrap-up timer is available on through the API. So your portals would be able to stop the timer or to extend the timer and things like that. We hope that these two features, the previous one and this one, will allow you to make your call center application, call center solution more attractive, and this way you will increase your sales. You will get more call center customers. Oh, sorry. This is the second feature. Sorry, not the previous one. So I meant that the feature of the wrap-up timer, and the call supervision will allow you to make more sales to the call center customers. Call supervision was introduced during the previous webinar. Just to remind you, this is a feature for managers of call centers where they can connect to any call that the agent is on. They can either listen to the call simply to monitor performance of the employee, or maybe they want to provide advice to a not so experienced employee. Or if the situation in the call escalates, they could simply barge into the call and take it over. So this functionality is already available in PortaSwitch. However, we just made it available in maintenance release 109. We made it available in our call control API. You know that this is the API to manage calls. So if you have this application for call centers, you can have this button for the manager where they could click the button and choose one of those modes and connect to an existing call of one of their agents. And you initiate this connection to a call through the call control API. So as I mentioned, we hope that this will allow you to onboard more call centers. A small addition to the administration of resellers. Previously, when you set up roles with customized access to self-care for customers or accounts, all those roles were visible to resellers. So when reseller is creating their own customer or account for their customer, they would get a long list of roles, basically all the roles for customers that exist in the platform. And some resellers get confused, some resellers would choose the wrong role, and so on. With maintenance release 109, you can choose for each reseller which particular roles are accessible for them. So whenever a reseller creates a new customer, they would get only a limited list of roles that they can choose from. This way you have better control over what kind of customers your resellers create, what kind of access they provide to their customers, and so on. And the last point I wanted to talk about related to PortaSwitch is the fact that we started to build a completely new version of the API. Those of you who had experience with our API, or at least look through the documentation, you know that, and it's not a secret, that our existing API is pretty much a representation of the data in the database, I mean, of the data model in the database. So the naming of the objects, the naming of the methods, the naming of the parameters in those methods is pretty much a reflection of what we have in the database. Now, the database was introduced more than 20 years ago, and we have some names in the database which do not really fit modern telecommunication world. So the main purpose of this new API is to get all the naming more user-friendly. So it would be easier for your in-house developers, for third-party developers that you may hire, easier to understand what they need to do with which methods to call in order to get some work done or to build some portal or application. Another feature that we are planning to introduce in API version 2 is whenever a request is sent to the system, the application would be able to specify which parameters it wants to get in response. And it should simplify work for developers, because instead of getting a huge product structure, for example, they can query just for the product name for administrators and product name for the end user. If that's all the information they need in their portal, they would just query for those particular parameters and skipping all the rest. So it should be easier for developers to start developing an application, and generally development of applications should be faster. At this point, you may raise a concern, like, Mike, you mentioned changing the names. So if you change the name of the objects, methods, and parameters, obviously your new API is not going to be backward compatible with the existing one. So what's going to happen to our portals and applications that we developed? Are they going to stop working tomorrow, or what's going to happen? So my answer is don't worry. We are not going to replace the existing API overnight. First of all, it will take us some time to cover all the functionality of PortaBilling in this new version of API. We just started. It will probably take us several months, maybe a year, to get all the functionality started. And only then we will be announcing and eventually doing the switch over from the old API to the new one. So that's going to take a while. And API version 2 is already available in maintenance release 110. There is a very limited set of methods, but your developers can start familiarizing themselves with this new API, with this concept, with the naming convention and things like that. And they can study the new API over time and eventually switch your portals and applications to the new API. So the transition is going to be gradual, don't worry. And now I'm going to pass the microphone to Svetlana.
Hello, everyone. I'll continue the presentation and let's move on to our next topic. It's our progress with PortaPhone development. In our latest iteration of PortaPhone, we're excited to introduce a list of key features. The first feature is about internet connection. We made a big improvement in how PortaPhone handles internet connections. Now, when you switch from mobile data to Wi-Fi, your calls won't be interrupted. And the second feature is multi-line support. Multi-line support allows users efficiently manage multiple incoming calls. With this feature, you can easily switch between calls, put them on hold, minimize the active calls, and other actions that make your communication experience smoother. And the last feature is attendant and unattended transfer. It was like a next logical step after multi-line support. And many of you asked about this feature, so now it is available in the application for both type of transfers. And let's move to our next topic. Now, it's about branding, and this is also like a main question that you're asking us about is whether PortaPhone is customizable. Yes, it's customizable, and the basic customization like color schemes, logos available right out of the box. We've developed a great tool that called PortaPhone Branding Editor. With this tool, it's easy to customize your application. It's like you need only 15 minutes. You don't need any special design skills or complex processes. It's easy, accessible, and quick. So you can select pre-made themes or create your own. You can pick primary accent colors to match your brand, upload your logo and brand icons for unique look. You can see your customization in real time, and you can hit the save button, and we will compile this application and create it for Android and iOS. With the PortaPhone branding editor, you have the power to create a custom branded PortaPhone application that's the true reflection of your own brand. By the way, we have a video on YouTube where you can find how to create your customized branding PortaPhone just like in 15 minutes. We will share this link in a chat. Yeah, Mike, please open the access to this chat. And if you want to test out the application on your own system, everything that you need to do is to log into Add-on Mart and subscribe to this model. If you have any difficulties, we're here to help. You can contact us at contact@portaone.com for system, and we will help you. Okay, and our next topic is about our changes on Add-on Mart. On Add-on Mart, we have two separate models about MS Teams. It's team integration channels and team integration users. Many of our clients want to sell mixture of them. So now we merge them into one model that offer two types of licenses for PBX users and for trunk users. With the PBX user license, Teams user can make and receive calls using their hosted PBX environment and access all PBX features. The trunk users license allows Teams users to make and receive calls through a SIP trunk integration, which is great for enterprises that primarily rely on Teams for their PBX needs and require calling to dial tone functionality. For clients who use both type of licenses, subscribing to this one model offers greater convenience and cost effectiveness compared to subscribing to each separately. And our next topic. As you know, we had a web self-care portal for a long time. However, we observed a growing demand from users who want to access the portal via their smartphones. With our mobile self-care portal, users can access their account, check their balance, monitor data and minutes usage, add new services, and even upgrade the existing bundles. And this all they can do from their mobile devices. This release brings a bunch of new features that will help you, that will improve the customer's experience. Yeah, and the list of this feature are the following. The first feature is balance top-ups. Whether your customers prefer to use new payment method or they've saved once, we got them covered. They can seamlessly top up their account balance using a variety of payment methods, including credit and debit cards. Bundle top-ups. Your customers can now top up their active bundles, also using new or saved payment methods, or even account balance. Their next feature is about money transfer. We've simplified the process of sharing balance with others. Your customers can easily transfer funds to friends or family members. And the last feature is about transaction history. Now your mobile customers can keep track on their expenses. They can view detailed transaction histories, including pay-as-you-go charges and subscription fees. So with these updates, we're empowering your customer to take full control of managing their finances and services with ease. Now back to Mike.
Thank you, Svetlana. So let's speak about what's next for PortaSwitch. The features that we have in pipeline, or actually some of them are already under development. Well, first of all, and you see it, it's with exclamation mark, we are bringing back the branding panel to the web interface. That feature was available for, I don't know, more than a decade on the old web interface. We are bringing it back. We are introducing it on the new web interface for administrators, for resellers, for customers, of course, and the accounts. That's the main goal. So basically, you would be able to add a brand panel to the self-care portal, for example. So that's the things that we are working currently on. Now, the next feature, that's prepaid mobile bundles. Bundles where you have a combination of some gigabytes for internet access, some minutes for calls outside of the network, and some SMS, and so on. Prepaid bundles are similar to quotas that we currently have, or volume discount plans. But the difference is that usually these prepaid mobile bundles, they have a different lifetime. So the lifetime would be something like 30 days or like 7 days, for example, like a week or things like that. And the other difference is that prepaid bundles, many mobile operators have them automatically restarting if there is enough balance to restart the bundle. So this is a slightly different thing that existing volume discount plans, and we are currently working on getting those prepaid bundles available in PortaSwitch. Also, I mentioned that in SIM card inventory, it's now possible to assign SIM cards to the customers. Now, the next logical step would be to have a special status for such SIM cards. Currently, there is no special status. If the card is assigned to account, it's in use. But if the card is not assigned to an account, it just has a status available. So we are introducing a new status for these cards assigned to a customer called reserved, and also a couple of other new statuses for SIM cards. That's the next logical step of the previous new features. And as usual, we would be happy to work on any feature requests that you may have. If you have some business idea, you want to introduce some new service or some new business model or whatever, and what PortaSwitch offers is not enough to launch that service, please do contact our project management department. Our business analyst will be happy to talk to you and find out what the business case is, and then we will turn it into a feature in PortaSwitch, so you would be able to launch a new service. Now, I forgot to mention at the beginning of the presentation that we have, or actually I did mention that we have a gift for you, and that is a guide how to enter IoT market, how to start providing IoT services. If you're interested in that and you want to avoid some basic mistakes, or you want to follow the best practices, we have this guide for you. Again, my colleague is sending you a link into the chat box, so please feel free to download the guide and read it. And now we are done with the presentation and we are ready to answer any questions that you may have. I'm just asking you, please type those questions not into the chat box, but please type them into the Q&A. It's easier for Svetlana and myself to keep track of those questions, and we will try to answer as many as possible. So I just recalled the question that I got from a customer while I was discussing the CLI validation. Basically, I mentioned that some of the vendors impose surcharges. You know, when the call is sent to that vendor and the call doesn't have a valid CLI, or it has a CLI from a particular region. So one of the ways, of course, to skip such a vendor completely, and this is the feature that I explained. This is how the feature works. It will allow you to skip vendors in such case. But what if you don't want to skip such a vendor? You want to send the call there, but you also want to introduce a surcharge to pass over the surcharge that vendor imposes on you. You want to pass it over to the customer. How do you do that? And the answer is CLI-based charging, the topic that's been on for quite a while. We have a design ready for CLI-based charging. It's just that until now, we had features that had higher priorities than CLI-based charging. But the answer to that question would be to go ahead with CLI-based charging, have it once we implement it, you would be able to set up charging for your customers, which is based on CLD and CLI, and also you will, of course, for vendor tariffs, you would also be able to set up charges based on CLD and CLI. So that's going to be introduced, I mean, CLI-based charging, and that's going to be the answer for such scenarios, for such business cases. We have a couple of questions regarding PortaPhone. Svetlana, would you like to answer those?
Yeah, the question is about multi-line support of PortaPhone. This is this for incoming calls, or can be used for multiple extension? As I understand this question, you're talking about supporting like multiple extension inside one application. Yes, am I right? It's like you can switch between inside the application, you can switch between registered accounts. If yeah, I'm
Svetlana,
right,
Svetlana, I think that's what is meant there. So yeah, you can safely assume that it is this.
Okay,
yeah.
So right now we support multi-line only for active calls. So you can switch between calls that you are receiving, yes. And we don't have such functionality like multiple extension in one application. Yeah, some of our customers are asking about that, but right now we don't have it. And as you know, we don't have it in roadmap.
Probably we should add it to the roadmap for the future, but I think it's not only incoming calls, because if I'm correct,
yeah,
if I
it's
remember
not
correct,
only about incoming.
Yeah, you can place a call on hold, and while the first call is on hold, you can initiate another call, and that would be an outgoing call. Yeah, so it's not a matter of incoming outgoing call, but it's limited to a single extension. You still operate within the application, you still operate with a single extension.
Yeah, you have a single extension, but you can manage several calls when you have it.
Yeah, several calls at a time. Yeah. There is a question about CLI-based charging, which I mentioned. That, of course, I should have predicted this question. Like, what version will CLI-based charging be available in? Let me be frank with you. I know that this is quite an important topic, quite a hot topic. But the reality is that for now, no customer of PortaOne has been willing to cover at least some portion of the cost of development. So it's not a paid feature request as such, at least for today. It's not a paid feature request requested by some of the customer or multiple customers and so on. So that feature is on our roadmap. And every quarter of the year, we look at the roadmap or at the feature list or wish list, if you like. We look at that list and we pick the features with the highest interest from our customers. Or obviously, also we implement features which were requested and paid by the customer. So it happens that we did design without anybody sponsoring that design. We did the proper design of this feature. On our own. It was finished last spring, so we have the design ready. Now, the implementation itself has been postponed, at least for summer and for autumn, because we had more pressing features to be developed, either paid by the customers or features that multiple customers were actively asking about. So I'm talking about a feature which is on the wish list and which gets into the product when the resources allow, when there is no higher priority features in the pipeline. So I cannot tell you the specific version when it will be. I hope that it will get when we will have, we will be at the end of November, we will be choosing the features for the next quarter for winter. Which are going to be developed in winter, and I hope that CLI-based charging will finally make it into the list of features for development. But I cannot promise that unless some customer decides to step up and cover at least some portion of that development. I cannot give you any guaranteed date or version where it's going to be implemented. There is also a related question about CLI-based charging that. There is an existing feature about EU, non-EU calls and about, for example, in the United States, there is also a slightly different flavor of that feature, which is basically interstate, intrastate calls. So those two features are already available. They can be configured in the system. And yes, they can be configured at the same time. So you can have some portion of the tariff covered for EU, non-EU originating calls and other rates in the tariff, which will be handled according to interstate, intrastate rates. So that can be done. But for example, using EU, non-EU rating for some other areas outside of European Union would be difficult because EU, non-EU rates, they are based on CLIs being inside or outside of EU. So there are there is a whole table listing which CLIs should be considered as EU and which not non-EU. And I don't think there is an easy way to populate this table for some country in Asia or some country in some other place. I mean, for you as a service provider. Unless you go directly, you know, straight to the database level and insert the data into the database directly. But then, you know, you will be on your own, and it's very prone to human errors. I mean, such approach is very prone to human errors. Once we implement CLI-based charging that I mentioned, which is like a fully featured CLI-based charging, which does not depend on particular region, which is not a special case for particular region. There we're talking about more than 2 rates. First of all, the major fundamental difference is that the general CLI-based charging is the way to set up more than 2 rates for particular destination. So that's a fundamental difference. Svetlana, a question about PortaPhone?
Yeah, the question about PortaPhone, about transfer. Yeah, now it's available, blind and attendant transfer, all is available in this new release. So yeah, you can subscribe to the PortaPhone and try this functionality.
And
it was like a main feature of this new release.
Okay, and I'll have to add that we are on PortaSwitch side. We are introducing now. We are currently implementing it, a semi-attended transfer. This was something new to me. So semi-attended transfer is basically when you transfer the call to somebody, you wait for the ring back, and then you hang up. You don't wait for the other person to answer, but you also don't hang up immediately, like during the blind transfer. So we are implementing it on PortaSwitch, the semi-attended transfer, and eventually we will also make it available in PortaPhone. So there will be 3 kinds of transfer in the future, not just 2 of them. Okay, we spent almost an hour. I think that's good enough for today. Thank you very much for your participation and for your questions. They were very interesting. So thank you for joining.
For your time.
Yeah. Have a nice day or evening or whatever time it is at your location.
Yeah,
Thank you. Bye.